Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So currently, I regret to inform you, Twitter is canceling Moistcritikal, aka Charlie. Now Charlie is one of those omnipresent YouTubers who pretty much everyone on the internet has had some sort of an exposure to because after all, he's got like 50,000 videos. He's been there since the dawn of YouTube, and really everyone's had a small influence put upon them by his content and his community. So you're probably wondering to yourself, how did Charlie, of all people, end up getting canceled by Twitter over the past 24 hours? Did he make too many poopy butthole jokes? No. His thing, what he did, is actually far worse than you could ever expect. He made a hot take that'll make your skin crawl. He said that Mr. Beast and his charitable actions are a good thing, actually. Yes, that is currently what is getting Charlie canceled on Twitter. So in case you didn't know, we talked about this a few days ago. Mr. Beast released his latest video on his Beast Philanthropy channel, and the plot of it is very simple. Just like all of his other videos, he used his profits from his other videos to give 20,000 kids in South Africa their first pair of shoes. The goal of this, of course, is to give a small token to these people that'll make their lives a lot better and end a lot of the suffering they face every day for not having a simple thing like a pair of shoes to wear. So, of course, Mr. Beast uses his wealth to help those in need. Twitter, furious. Okay, they were furious once again. You can even see the 4,500 quote retweets on the simple announcement by Dexerto. And yeah, a lot of negativity saying that he's actually selfish and that he is somehow a bad guy for participating in this evil capitalist system, that really he shouldn't be doing any of these things because he's just making things worse. Well, after seeing a lot of the outrage, Charlie came out and made this tweet. It is about as lukewarm and non-controversial as you could possibly make. It says, Mr. Beast helped more people. Luckily, the intellectual saints on Twitter are here to explain why good things are actually evil and nothing positive is real. That is a super hot take, right? Yeah, it's pretty agreeable. Mr. Beast doing good things is actually good at some level. Even if you have little tiny criticisms about the best way of using his money to help the enrichment of other people in need's lives. But no. We can all agree there's something good there, right? Right? No, of course not. There's 1,000 quote retweets on this. 1,000 quote retweets attacking Charlie over this take. Now, something I think is always fascinating with situations like this, if you go through the replies, there's thousands of comments to this tweet. The reply section is like 99% positive, or they're making fun of the outrage that angry Twitter users are making. But if you go to the quote retweets, every single quote retweet is negative. 99% of them are attacking Charlie and Mr. Beast as a result. And why does this happen? Well, it's a very Twitter-like phenomenon where replies don't get as much traction, and also you're opening yourself up to people who might disagree with you. And of course, why would any terminally online Twitter user who thinks good deeds are bad, why would they want to expose themselves to someone outside of their echo chamber? So what they do is they quote retweet, which gives them more of an influence and a higher chance for likes, but it also starts within their own community who are just going to agree with them, and it gets them a large amount of support quickly. That's why they do it, and I think that's a funny thing to point out. Now, like I said, there is a ton of quote retweets attacking Charlie, and perhaps there's no tweet that is more viral than this one. It states, people obfuscating the point we're trying to make about Mr. Beast, and that it's incredibly strange to do charity content. Would he still be generous if he couldn't make a spectacle of it? No one is saying doing good things is bad. We are saying that his existence is emblematic of the capitalist society we live in, and that's bad. So much like the Hogwarts Legacy related harassment, gaslighting, that nobody is saying that doing good things are bad. Of course, there are hundreds of tweets you can look at from just his most recent video attacking him and calling him a bad person and selfish, and that his actions are actually hurting people. And, again, don't let people like this make you think otherwise. It's out there. But let's focus on what they're actually saying here. And there's a reason why people like this are so angry and have such a problem with what Mr. Beast is doing. And it's the fact that Mr. Beast is out there actually making a difference. He is taking real world action and helping to alleviate the suffering of millions. Something that people like this haven't done. They don't have the resources and they really don't have the will to do it either. So he is trying to help people in this terrible capitalist society while you sit here in your chair theorizing with your surface level knowledge about how you know how to fix society. And here's the thing. If you're saying Mr. Beast wouldn't do this if he couldn't make a spectacle out of it, let me just ask you, how would you do it? How would you want to generate all of this money that is necessary to help those in need? You have to have revenue. That is the reality of the world. If you want to help those who are in need, you need revenue to do so. It is a function of charity. How are people like this going to amass the wealth that Mr. Beast has been able to do to fund these charitable acts? I'll wait all day. They have no answer. And here's the thing. We're talking about this evil capitalist society that we all live in. Well, there's a reason why people admire Mr. Beast more than people on Twitter. You know why? Because you and Mr. Beast were born in the same evil society. And yet, what Mr. Beast did is look at that society that he did not choose to create. He found a way, without even having to rely on voluntary donations from wealthy people, he found a way to fund an entire charity based on only eyeballs looking at his content. He has found a way in this evil, terrible society to find a charity that solely relies on getting attention from people for ad revenue, which is then given right back to people in need. He doesn't have to rely on some rich person to feel generous one day and hand over some money. He is taking direct action and doing it in a way that doesn't rely on people being generous. It relies on people seeing what he's doing. I think that is an amazing adaptation to this society we're living in, and one that has worked to the benefit of millions in need. Now compare that to someone like this, whose entire stamp and reaction to this society is being miserable on Twitter and complaining about those going out and making an actual difference. That is why people, they're not dick riding Mr. Beast. They admire what he's doing because what he is doing is actually very creative, and one that is a very genius response to this society we're living in. Creating a charity that revolves only around the attention that he can get directed towards it. Isn't that an amazing thing? One that also promotes all of these issues while they're helping solve other ones and bringing attention to other charitable needs and maybe making people want to be more charitable. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing. Like, you can ask these people all the time, what have they done to make an actual difference for those suffering? And Mr. Beast has found just that, and it makes them absolutely furious. And we'll look at a couple more quote retweets. So this person makes a long thread saying, I like how many guys whose entire livelihood comes from video games and making fun of bad movies pretend they have any knowledge of how the world works at all. Which they are right in some regard. Just because someone, a celebrity or a content creator, is popular, that doesn't make their opinion any more valid or make them any more aware of how the world works. That's entirely valid. I hate when people see some popular person make an opinion and they put extra weight on it because they're popular. Like someone like Charlie getting popular from his type of content doesn't make him some sort of genius who understands how society works, but it works in reverse too. You don't take their word like the gospel and also have to pin it down for every little criticism could ever have. And in this case, I don't think what he's saying is that deep. He is saying that people on Twitter are going to have a problem with someone doing a positive deed because they don't believe in anything positive existing. I think that's a pretty lukewarm take that is not controversial and one that a lot of people can agree on. honestly, free word of advice from someone who has worked 9 to 5 jobs, who has worked in manual labor. If you look, let me make this clear. Like, now I have the luxury of making content for a living, and it's great, and I appreciate that. But if you want the best understanding of how the world works, go out and find regular, everyday working people, and I guarantee you'll get more information about what people need and want out of the world from them than you will from an infinite number of terminally online Twitter users who haven't left their house in 5 years. Okay? Twitter is not the place to understand how the world works at all. None of these people know anything they're talking about. Okay? It's not a surprise people who literally have hundreds of thousands of tweets every single year are not out in the real world experiencing anything and just relying on armchair philosophy to try to get an understanding of how the world works in theory. But this last part here, all of these guys have either a video or a tweet or something making fun of charity as a cynical cash grab / good PR, but they have to defend when Mr. Beast does the exact same thing as the guy from Tom's because they want some of his success to trickle down. Now, it is definitely very true that Charlie and a lot of other people defending Mr. Beast have made fun of and called out scammy, scummy charities. They have done that, but they're doing it because they're greedy. In fact, one thing a lot of people don't know about Charlie is that for many of his first years on YouTube, he gave away virtually all of his ad revenue to charities. And eventually he stopped doing that, not because he was greedy. He stopped doing that because he began to realize that a lot of these charities were incredibly greedy and taking more of a percentage than they deserved or should be ethically. So he stopped doing that and he rerouted that into different ways of giving back, whether it's giving to content creators or those in need, or starting things like esports leagues that give people financial opportunities through there. You know why you don't hear about all of these things that Charlie does? It's because he doesn't rub it in people's faces. And that is a fair criticism you could give of Mr. Beast, right? You could say, well, this is all a grand public spectacle and he wants people to see what he's doing. Of course, but that's a function of his charity. And unlike all of these other organizations that take sometimes upwards of 50% of what's given for the charity, he gives it all back. He is quite literally as close to a pure form of charity that you'll ever see. He gets whatever he earns through ad revenue in one video and turns it around and gives it all back for the content of the next video in a cycle that just feeds on more revenue and more charitable acts. And there is no comparing those two things. There are plenty of scummy charities out there and they should be called out even more than they already are. But there is a reason that there's a difference between what Mr. Beast does and what these charities do and how optics work into all this stuff. Here's another one. I see this whole attitude towards Mr. Beast, especially since his last video involved Africa, that he is a colonizer and an imperialist. And honestly, if you have this kind of a delusion in your head of what Mr. Beast is all about, it's honestly really sad that you think this is at all the way he wants to portray himself or to be received by people he is helping. This is headcanon that you're projecting onto him because you can't comprehend the fact that someone would actually want to do charitable acts. So you have to fetishize it in your mind as some gross racist act for whatever this is. And it really just goes to show you that you can't do anything to please people on Twitter. You really can't. And they will spin it in the most absurd of ways possible. Just like any other video, I can guarantee, just like with the reactions of some of the people involved in his blindness video, the people who are given shoes, I think would widely praise Mr. Beast for what he did for them. And they would not view him as some evil colonizer coming in and stepping all over them to feel good about himself. It's pretty obvious that's how people would feel. And one last thing, last quote we're going to look at. This one says, "Capitalist ideology is the reason why dick riders for the rich pretend not to understand the pretty simple fact that wealth is connected to poverty. The rich keep getting richer off exploiting the poor while using charity to appear virtuous. So, I don't know. When you're this depressed, it's kind of hard, I guess, to understand how any good acts could ever happen in the world, because there's always some nefarious reason behind it, or some deeper meaning that actually is bad. Well, just like I say in all my other videos, at the end of the day, a good act is a good act. I don't care if someone has a hint of selfish nature behind their charitable acts. At the end of the day, if someone's life and their suffering is eased by a charitable act, I don't think the intent of the person doing it matters very much. I don't think if someone was saved from a burning building would care if the person who saved them only did it for fame and attention. At the end of the day, the person received the benefit, just like anything Mr. Beast is doing. And the fact that you can't have a viewpoint that will separate what is superficial attention versus attention that funds his charity, that gives him more ad revenue, that the fact that this is how his entire system works, the fact you can't separate that from classic everyday narcissism is pretty telling. And honestly, if we're talking about a person like this who is a self-proclaimed communist educator, I think the best educator about communism is history. Because unlike the delusions people like this have on Twitter, if you ever existed in a regime like that, you would not be assigned to the position of the Twitter philanthropist or philosopher or whatever you want to be. You would be assigned to the minds of Section 7B until finally you realize how miserable things are and things boil over. None of these people live in the real world. I don't understand how it's gotten this bad on Twitter, but when you find people in the crosshairs like Charlie at this point, who say the most lukewarm takes about basically good charitable acts are good, and Twitter will find ways to tear that apart, it's a sad thing to see, and it's exactly what people are doing in response. They're tearing down good charitable acts and finding any sort of mental gymnastics they can employ to make it a bad thing. And you know what? I can assure you that the real world isn't like this. The real world is not like the people we've looked at today. They don't exist in the real world. Twitter is not a real place. Twitter is the reflection of people who are terminally online, who have no control of their own lives, and yet want to tell the entire society how it should function and how they can fix it when they can't even fix their own lives. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all your thoughts about this in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time.